Today we're talking about the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
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 Among other things. Even though it's like such a big story in the Bible, it's actually like a really small section in the Bible.
It's like, I think basically if we kind of kept doing the 3-chapter version, there's a lot of like genealogy stuff, and then it kind of goes into this about the Tower of Babel, and then it goes into like the little bits of the beginning of like Abraham.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the Tower of Babel?
No. Tell me about it.
Wait, you've never heard of it?
I've heard of it, but I don't know.
What do you think it is?
What it is? What do I think it is?
Yeah.
I honestly I don't know.
Really? That's okay.
Yeah, if you had to guess, what do you think it would be?
I've heard of the name Babel before.
Uh-huh. Isn't that like
He's a guy, right?
It's a language app too, isn't it?
It is. I think it might.
Which is funny.
Is it
Which is a hint.
Maybe that's why I've heard of it.
This is a hint for you.
Isn't
There's
there also like
a movie
like
with
a
Brad
Pitt movie. Yeah.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is like very on brand.
But I never saw it. So
that's funny.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, off the top of my head, I mean, I don't know like if I could really conceptualize it. I guess
you'll see why the movie is called Babel. Have you seen the movie?
I have not seen the movie.
Oh, okay.
You can spoil the movie.
You're really
for me.
Useless during this episode.
I'm useless.
No, you're doing all the things.
I'll leave. It's fine.
No.
You have to teach
You're
me.
giving
That's the
us
whole point.
nothing.
So
You're right.
you can.
Well,
finally save me.
I think for the last episode, like what we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this would be like kind of covering like chapters 10, 11, 12, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So 10 is basically after Noah's kids, and then it goes into like their
10 is like a really boring chapter. Unless you are like a history buff, I guess, or something. But like 10 is basically just like Noah had 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and then these are like all of their descendants. And there's like a lot of chapters like this in the Bible where it literally is just like this person like gave birth to this person, and then they lived until they were 500, and then their son gave birth to this person, and they lived until they were 400, and then like it's really not interesting, but I guess that's supposed to be the like historical record.
Well, and that's sort of what that next chapter mostly is. It's like a little interesting because you have like we kind of touched on this the other day about how some of it has been used in like Ham, the one who, whatever he did, castrated his. In the last episode, we talked about how he, saw his father's nakedness and all of that stuff. But they kind of break it down of like the directions in which their lineages went. So like Ham's ancestors are supposedly like the African, Egyptian, Canaanites. Shem's are like the Hebrew, Arabs, Assyrians, and Japheth are like the European. So that is sort of like what is sort of traditionally taught. And that's where the word like Semitic comes from Shem. And that's pretty much it. And then it's like a couple generations of that. And then it basically mentions a guy named Nimrod, who, if anyone's interested in Nimrod, he's a interesting character because he's sort of like found in other places in history. And there's a lot of, they don't know if he's a historical person or if some people think he is based on this historical figure, and some people think he's not. But he's like sort of the main person that's in that lineage that sort of sticks out.
Does he come back in the Bible?
Yeah, Nimrod is mentioned. I don't know if he's mentioned more after this in the Bible, but he's mentioned in other texts, like in other Jewish texts that are like outside of the Torah.
Also, yeah, we were looking this up, but like I'm sure you've heard people use the word Nimrod as like an insult for someone like being stupid.
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
Like you're a
about that.
Nimrod.
Mm-hmm.
So Nimrod in the Bible was like a really, really skilled hunter. And they kind of do these like folklorish things where it's like, you know, like one person represents like this person's really good at baking bread.
Right.
Or like this person's really good at telling time or whatever. They just give these like
Telling time.
so Nimrod is
Dancing.
like the king of hunters.
Right.
So in the Looney Tunes cartoons in the 80s, Bugs Bunny is chasing Elmer Fudd, and Elmer Fudd was like famously a really bad hunter, and so Bugs Bunny as a joke calls him Nimrod, and because he's not a good hunter, and then people didn't understand the reference, and so when Bugs Bunny called him Nimrod, they just thought it meant that he was an idiot. And so that took over within popular culture, and then people just adapted that word and started calling each other Nimrod.
But Nimrod was originally a great hunter.
A great hunter.
Which is also interesting because they, like you were saying, they do that a lot in the Bible of like, you know, this person is a great hunter, this person is great, which is similar to the Greek, a lot of, not just the Greeks, but, you know, Greek and Roman mythology of like this god represented this person, this, you know, so I think a lot of the lineages that we see here are sort of their version of the polytheistic deities and sort of what they represent in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know, but Nimrod's an interesting character if people are curious.
Well, yeah, it's also just funny because, like, if you were a great hunter and then, like, 2,000 years later, your name meant that, like, you're a fucking idiot.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, like, caused by the Looney Tunes.
Well, listen, he...
like, I don't know anything about Nimrod other than it means that you're a damn fool.
Well, some people think he was Sargon, who was history's first empire builder. And then Sargon's grandson was Naram, and some people think that some scholars think that those two names got mixed, whether it's talking about Sargon or Naram, but Naram was like the first recorded king in history to declare himself God. And so they're interesting characters because it doesn't necessarily talk ill of him in biblical texts, but in some of the other like rabbinic texts, it talks about in the origin stories of like Abraham and stuff like that. Nimrod is the one who like throws Abraham into the furnace and is like a great ruler.
Nimrod,
yeah. In those rabbinic texts, like the Book of Jubilee and
these are Jewish texts.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because there's a whole collection outside of the Bible of like thousands of years of like rabbinic texts of additional stories that kind of give like more backstory to some of these characters. And so Nimrod is talked about more in those. So if anybody's curious, you can learn more about Nimrod.
It's interesting
there.
too. They say Nimrod is the first man on earth to be a mighty man.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, and then they don't expand on that.
So I said like, yeah.
So like, I guess like everyone else before that sucked. And then Nimrod was like the first good one.
Well, I think that's why some scholars think he's representing Sargon, because Sargon was like the first guy basically to like rule an empire. And so even though Nimrod is like the hunter, because of saying that he was like a mighty man, they think it was like sort of the origins of an empire ruler, essentially.
Gotcha.
So that's why Nimrod is, you know, he kind of sticks out in that lineage. And there's a lot to possibly explore about him, but, you know, it's a lot of hearsay and, you know, mythology mixed with who knows what. So, you know, if you're curious, you can go read about it.
Yeah, I would always skip over these parts in the Bible. when I was a kid
Yeah.
reading this. They were like really boring to me. Well, it was just a bunch of names with like a lot of like just random information. Like Cush fathered Nimrod, who fathered like Babel, who followed Erech, Akkad, and Calneh. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this information?
Yeah. Yeah, and which, I mean, like, I didn't even know all these other, like, rabbinic texts existed that had all these other stories. I never even used to know that any of that stuff existed. I thought, like, you know, like we've talked about, even the canon that we have. When I was growing up, I didn't even know that there were other canons. I didn't know there were other Jewish texts. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know any of that.
Yeah, I don't feel like most people do. I think they think this is like the only book from that time.
Written by hand by God himself.
Which is crazy. I'm not like talking shit about the Bible at all. It's just like interesting like reading it again and being like, oh, this is like just one of many books.
Right.
And it's a collection of a lot of books, but
Right.
it's not. I don't know. I don't want to say it's not. It's just, I guess, historically is not as like special as people would think because there's so many other texts.
I mean, it's played a very important historical role for sure, but it's definitely based on texts that predate it. I mean, like I've come to have no doubt about that in my mind.
Yeah,
You
I mean
know.
that's just factual.
Yeah.
There's
yeah.
no like there shouldn't be a debate around that.
Right. And so there's a little, you know, some people think because this sort of, it goes from that lineage that is discussed in chapter 10, and then it goes into basically the story of Babel. And, you know, some people think that Nimrod was the one who was like ruling over Babylon at the time when the Tower of Babel was built, and then other people think it was other people. It's a bit of a confusing history to summarize what inspired what and when everything was really written. So this is a bit of a like, you know, hard time to summarize, I guess. But I guess we can move on to the
Tower of Babel.
Yeah, and what did you grow up? Just before we're re-exploring, like as a kid, what was your
Tower of
experience?
Babel was basically like everyone on Earth was like, let's build a tower that's like taller than God, and we'll like become more powerful than God if we can like reach up to heaven. And so like they all started building this tower, and then God was like, wait, these people are getting like, if they all speak the same language, they're going to be way too powerful. So I'm going to like make them speak tons of different languages, and then they'll be confused and they won't be able to build this really tall tower.
Right.
And that was like that's where like language came from.
Do you think they were like trying to reach up to God or the gods, or do you think they were trying to like make like a landing platform for like UFOs, or do you think they were trying to just be, like you said, bigger than God?
That's what I remember. That's like how it was told to me in like children's stories, you know?
Yeah.
But if I'm thinking about it, like really dissecting it, it's like, I don't know, you're like on Earth, like what is there around you? Like rocks and dirt, and like your job is like to reproduce. Then you're just kind of like so little of Earth has been like discovered. They're like, what if we just build like the tallest thing ever? You know, it's almost like childlike.
Yeah.
Like they're like, what if we like, let's build like the tallest, like what would happen? You know, they still haven't even like discovered, like have a word for like gravity at this point.
Well, I think it's interesting because there's other stories, like Enki in the Sumerian texts, he scrabbles their languages and stuff as well. And there's a lot of cultures that built big things. Most people think this is the Babylonian, the ziggurat structures, and there's a specific ziggurat that there's actually the ruins of it are still in Iraq, I believe, which is the it's called Eda Menaki ziggurat, ETEMENANKI. which meant the house of the foundation of heaven and earth. And it was this structure that was basically a temple, and you can see how it's built, was being built essentially like steps going upward. And there was a lot of disdain for the Babylonians at that time because of their, they think that this was written sort of like during the time of the Babylonian exile and stuff like that. So there's a whole context there, but it's interesting to look up the ziggurat and the shape of the ziggurat. And
Is
so
it? I'm just kidding.
I think it's interesting, but they give this, it's sort of a story to kind of, I think, diss on the Babylonians who had been very oppressive to the Jewish people. So I think it's a story of why they have different languages, but it's also this, like, the Babylonians are prideful and arrogant. And does that make sense? Like, I think that's why this text is written in the first place.
To like shit on the Babylonians?
Essentially, yeah. Yeah.
Because they were oppressive to the Jewish people.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And so it's an explanation of different languages, but also during the Babylonian exile, is a lot of times when these texts are coming from that time. And, it is interesting because Jewish people basically got kicked out of their land, and then they have, and the Babylonians are running so much of that part of the world at the time. They're building these massive structures, and that's what the ziggurats were. And so it's just, it's interesting that pretty much all scholars agree that this text is essentially kind of like dissing on Babylonians and Babylonian culture and their arrogance and their pride and their grandiose idea of themselves,
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So chapter 11, verse 4, I can just start at the top of chapter 11. It says, now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as which this is so weird. I'm sorry. So chapter 11 starts with, now the whole earth had one language and the same words. In chapter 10, it literally says, in verse 5 of chapter 10, from these coastland peoples spread in their lands, each with his own language by their clans and their nations.
Right.
Like, it just literally contradicts himself immediately. So chapter 10, it like tells you all these descendants, and it says like 2 or 3 times in this chapter, like they had their own language. They each had their own language. And then we go to chapter 11, and it's like, now everyone on earth only spoke one language.
But see, that's the same thing we keep running into, though, is like it'll same thing when we're talking about Eden. It's sort of the creation story is told in one way, and then the next chapter goes into like a different sort of a different retelling of that same topic.
Yeah, there's just so many contradictions, and like when I was young reading this, I would just like overlook them and pass on to the next thing, but it's like so blatantly obvious reading it now.
Well, and you're taught to overlook it, right?
Yeah.
You're not being taught to question it. You're being taught to you're told these things as just like these stories, and especially as a kid, you're not like getting too into the detail, but
yeah, there was definitely a fear around asking, like, why does this not seem to make sense?
Right.
Because this is supposed to be like the perfect word of God. But then I'm just like, hey, this doesn't make sense. Like, you literally just said there's so many different languages, and then the next verse is like, by the way, there's only one language.
Right.
And I'm like, then why did he just say the other thing?
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, whoever wrote this, like, didn't do a very good job. Right?
Yeah. Well,
like, I'm not like a genius. I'm just like, if you say like A plus B equals C, and then the next verse is like, by the way, A plus B doesn't equal C. And I'm like, hello?
Yeah. Well, they say it's because it is multiple authors, and that's the issue. But I
mean, if I was writing a book, I would want to have a meeting with the authors and be like, can you guys get on the same fucking page? Right?
Yeah, you'd think.
Okay, so chapter 11, verse 1. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. Okay. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth.
Which even that is interesting real quick, because they're saying like, let us make it, like we have to make a name for ourselves or else we'll be dispersed. And
Well, I'm interpreting that as like them saying, no matter what happens, we'll always have this like calling card. So we'll know to go back to this thing because it'll be like the tallest structure. Like you'll be able to see it anywhere.
Yeah.
And you can always go back to you know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
billboard.
Yeah, except
for, like,
the only
their
reason
tribe.
the only reason I say that is because like later on they are dispersed.
Right. It's like they know what's about to happen in the next couple of verses.
Yeah. I
It's
guess.
a little too convenient. So, lest we be dispersed over the whole face of the earth. And then the Lord God came down to see the city and the tower. He's just bopping around town with the children of man had built. And the Lord said, behold, they are one people and they all have one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them.
See, this is the other thing is I don't, with especially in Genesis, there's so much of like God is like trying to limit this. God is trying to limit what, you know, what humans do, like the tree of knowledge. You know, it's like, no, you can't do that. And this, it's like these people are just trying to build a tall building. And he's like, no, can't do that.
Yeah, this God in the Old Testament and early Genesis is really annoying and childlike. Like, it doesn't seem to have any emotional maturity.
Mm-hmm.
I just like don't really prescribe to this God. Like,
Well-
he literally comes down and he sees them building a building. He's like, oh my God, if they can build a building, there's no end to what they could do.
Yeah, and it's like, but what if you had I mean, it's like having a child. Wouldn't you want your child to like do the most that they could possibly
What is
do?
he afraid of? I mean, like God knows that there's not oxygen that much high up. Like they can't breathe and they'll die.
Right.
He's like, if they can build a building, they could
Well, and also
What are you
you got to
afraid
think
of?
about this. Like, these are such early origins, and you'll see as we go through the Bible, the character of God shifts and shapes so much, and I think so much of that is based on the
no, God is never changing. And God is always the
right.
same.
He's always the same. His character, yeah. Well, just wait a couple more books, and he gets real scary. But
so then God says, come, this is interesting. God says, come, let us go down and
let us again,
right. Come, let us go down there, confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they let off building the city. Therefore its name was Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them all over the face of the earth. It's so funny that the people were like, we got to build this tower because let us make a name for ourselves lest we be dispersed all over the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And then 4 verses later, God's like, and then I dispersed them all over the face of the earth.
yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, wow. Somehow they saw that one
He
coming.
keeps just like undoing anything. It's like in Eden, you know, he says, unless humans become like one of us, like that's his fear. He doesn't want them to become like one of us. And the same thing, it's like them trying to reach up toward heaven. It's like he's wanting to prevent that. It's interesting. It's also in these sort of origin stories, it is a lot more, it's like coming, like where is God coming from? I think in other books he's talked more about as like this spiritual thing. It's like like the Holy Spirit and the things like that. But this is very literal, as if he's like coming from a very specific place. And he's like, I'm coming down to the land. It's like, where is he? And I think a lot of that stems from that time period where people literally didn't know anything about space. And so they're like, he's up there, you know, he's just
Yeah.
right above us.
Totally.
And so that's what this is, you know, their explanation for that.
Yeah. It's also, I remember this like being quoted a lot where God said like, come, let us go down there and confuse their language, because that was like proof of like the Trinity, that he's like, come, let us go down there.
Well, just like the
Like,
first
it was-
chapter of Genesis,
Where he's
right?
like referring to himself as multiple people.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
It's
come,
that. It's
let
that.
us go down there. It's not just God. It's like God, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus all went down there.
Well, that's that debate of like, it's the word Elohim, which is a plural, that people like to say that it's Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and it's like, but it's sort of the origins of, again, going back and forth between the Elohim and the Yahweh, which is
Yeah, it's just so funny where it's like a group of people were like, let's build a tower so people know us. And then God was like, wait, they're going to get way too powerful.
Right.
I have to make them all speak like Chinese and Japanese. That's what I was like, imagine you're all speaking English. And then one day you turn to your coworker and he only speaks Russian.
Right.
And then you can't build together.
That's what, yeah.
Because you need to have a lot of verbal communication to build bricks.
Yeah, I never understood.
I'm like, I feel like you could still build the tower even if you spoke different languages.
That's true. But he also dispersed them. That's the part that always sucked to me, is I was like, what? Did they just fly through the air and land somewhere? Or like, how did they disperse? And did they only disperse because they started speaking different languages?
Oh, I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's said as like one singular thing.
There the Lord dispersed them all over the face of all the earth. He just said... So like they just went everywhere.
He just threw them around.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
We're now at the Tower of Babel. How much time has passed between now and the flood?
I mean, we could be very specific about that. I want to say like 4 or 5 generations.
Well, it says earlier, after the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950. Okay, so this is at least 350 years after. But then Noah has all these descendants. What do you think it is?
I want to say it's like
800 years or something.
I mean, it's hard because they're all living like crazy times. I mean, if you read basically chapter 10, you could do the math because it says how long each person lived. But I want to say it's like 5 generations, something
so
like
a considerable amount of time, like enough for a population to have
hundreds of years
reformed.
Yeah,
but again, it doesn't fully make sense though either, because there's sort of like his 3 sons, here's the lineage of them, here's the lineage of them. It's similar to how, remember when with Cain and Abel, after he killed his brother, and then they're like, he's like, well, other people are going to kill me if you kick me out. And you're like, what are the other people? Do you remember how we were talking about that? Yeah. It's the same thing where you're like, all of a sudden there's all these other people again. And you're like, well, where did these people come from?
Yeah. Well, you've made the point before how there's multiple flood stories.
Right.
And so we're talking about this story being told from one very specific perspective in one specific part of the world.
Exactly.
Which feels like your entire world, right? Because you don't have a concept of space.
Exactly. But I think that's the sort of the weird balance is like, and the interesting thing about this is taking it for within the context of when it was written and why it was written and what else was written, instead of just like a literal, this is the only thing. Because if you take it as like, this is the only truth, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It contradicts itself continuously.
But it does make sense as a explanation for why there would be lots of other people around the world that speak lots of different languages. Like if a traveler comes to you and speaks a completely different language,
for sure,
this serves as maybe an explanation for that.
It gave them an explanation.
For their time.
It feels like folklore.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
a very convenient way of saying like, Mommy, why does like Cindy speak Japanese and Billy speaks like Spanish?
Because God wanted you to be weak.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting
because you played with those Legos too much. You built that tower too high.
It's just so funny how juvenile they make God out to be. Like, this is such a sad God, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm really scared that they're going to build a tower that's going to get too powerful. If they can do that, they can do anything. It's like, I thought you were God.
Right.
Like, why are you scared?
Well, I did think it was a little interesting, though, with this story about how it sort of reflects later on in, like, the New Testament and Acts about, like, what did you grow up thinking about, like, Pentecost? Like, people speaking in tongues. Like, about people speaking in tongues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
That story of people speaking in tongues where it's almost the opposite end of this story, which is sort of interesting, where all of a sudden everyone is speaking in multiple languages where they can then understand each other. Like language, they're speaking in languages that other people can understand, I guess is a better way to word that, which I thought was like an interesting parallel to this story, where they're like,
sure, like even though they're dispersed and like all speak different languages, because of like speaking in tongues, they're able to communicate with each other.
Yeah, which I don't know how we got into sort of like some types of speaking in tongues that we have now, because in that text it's like specific languages that people understood, but
yeah,
you know, it's a bit of a different conversation, but I thought that is a interesting like opposite parallel to this story.
Yeah, that is interesting, I guess. Yeah, and that's like, you know, through the power of the Holy Spirit we're all able to unite. I feel like I'm sounding so cynical.
I was gonna say, I feel like you're like extra jaded today.
I'm not upset at all at any of this. I'm just like, guy, like honestly, I'm a little offended, I guess, where I'm just like, how is this your God? This guy is like really insecure.
It bothers me a little bit how little people questioned all of this. I mean, especially even just like us growing up. I mean, I understand, you know, maybe a couple 100 years ago still where this is all people really had to live by. But when people even still to this day don't even like question or like really want to know, you know, not to talk about people like comments and things like that again, but people will often be like, well, you just have to read more. Like you just have to. And I'm like, I do. I mean, even what we're discussing right now, it's far more detailed discussion than anything I ever did going to any Bible study or church or anything when it came to like critical thinking and peeling back layers, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess because it's like honest and we're not afraid like someone's gonna believe like we're not like a real Christian,
right? Or
like be accused of that, you know?
Yeah, because
that was like the worst thing back then, being like, oh my God, that person's like not a real believer,
right?
Like he doesn't have blind faith,
right?
Thinking, no, I'm just trying to like really understand what they're saying here.
I think that you can't be afraid to question things, and it's like I think that's the desire to learn. And if you're not questioning things, you're not learning anything, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have no problem with God, but like that is weird if when people are like, I believe in the God of the Bible, and I'm like,
which one?
The God of the Bible of Genesis chapter 11, because that God is like really embarrassing, like has like self-esteem issues and is like really insecure.
Yeah, I just imagine him coming down and like literally kicking like a Lego set, you know, like kicking a Lego set and like taking the toys and throwing them on the four corners of the room.
Yeah, it's like Tower of Babel. Now, yeah, like you speak Japanese now. Like I am over this. Like, what is his problem?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's freaking me out.
Well, if God is a reflection of us, we're very petty.
I know, but I'm like
unreasonable people.
I don't want a petty God.
Right.
Yeah. That's so scary.
Yeah. It's
I get confused though, because then people will be like, well, that's the God of the Old Testament, but like, you know, like things are different now in the New Testament. I'm like, so did that God disappear?
Yeah. Well, they say that they pick and choose with the laws too. You know, a lot of Christians will say like, you know, if you're talking about you know, how we've discussed like the word homosexual wasn't in the Bible until 1946, you know, but then there are references of it in the Old Testament that are very specific laws. And so if you basically go through that whole proof in the New Testament, then they want to reference the Old Testament. I'm like, but you don't apply Old Testament laws to your life as a whole. Like, you know, when it comes to the mixed fabrics and the food that you're eating and stuff. So it's like, there's a lot of picking and choosing that people are doing.
I'll say.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not choosing this.
So well, that's pretty much it with the Tower of Babel, right?
It's a really short section. It's like it's literally one paragraph. And this, you know, if you've seen the Brad Pitt, Cate Blanchett film,
I have not.
It's Inarritu. and it's like 5 or 6 different stories that are going on at the same time, but it's about people in all different countries.
Oh.
And they speak different languages.
Oh.
And so...
But it's set in this time?
No. It's set in present day.
It's just like
In the movie, Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett are like on vacation somewhere in like sub-Saharan Africa or like the Middle East or something. I can't remember. And they're on a bus and someone shoots a sniper at the bus and it shoots Cate Blanchett in the neck. This is like the premise of the movie. And then like it goes into the origin of like where was that weapon manufactured, and like basically like you get it like every different like perspective of like how they all got to that point.
I see.
And then there's like a businessman in Japan, and there's like a girl with like a lot of pubic hair who's an adult. Anya's not listening. No response to
That's
pubes.
okay. We're just talking about pubic hair.
Yeah, it's an interest, but like Babel is a good name for it because it's just like about all these people dispersed all over the world.
I see. Yeah.
And like how they're somehow connected by this gun that's fired.
I see. That makes sense. I think. Well, and I wanted to specify too, because real quick, because Babili was Akkadian for gate of the gods, and the word Bavel they think turned later to Balal, which means in Hebrew to confuse. So that's sort of like the origins, most likely, of where the word Babel came from. Just for reference, if anyone's interested.
Lots of etymology in this episode.
But yeah, so then basically after the Tower of Babel, it kind of gets into like a little more genealogy again, and then right, and then it goes into Abraham, which is like a huge character, and I guess we'll talk a little bit about like the very beginning part of his story.
Yeah, it's funny. So after Tower of Babel, it's just like a lot of that lineage stuff again, where it's like Peleg lived for 30 years and fathered Ru, and Ru lived for 209 years and had other sons and daughters. That's like really boring, talking about people like giving birth. And then, man, I am jaded today. Okay, so then eventually Abram is born, and God, who Abram, we know because we've read this before, is going to become Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
And Abraham is like really popular.
We
in
have
the
read this
Bible.
before. Yeah.
But God says to Abram, I'm going to make a great nation with you, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed.
Father Abraham had many sons.
And many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. Now let's just praise the Lord, right? On Father. Oh, that's what it was like.
Yeah,
Add a new body part.
Right.
Right arm, left arm, right foot, left foot. Turn around, sit down.
Yeah.
Father Abraham. And many sons.
Yeah. What a throwback.
Wait, Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham, and I am one of them, and so are you. So let's just praise the Lord. Wow.
That was so cute.
God, we're so cursed.
And gay.
Also annoying that God is just like, I'm picking, like, I have such internal struggles with this of feeling like God did not pick me to be blessed. And God's just like, Abram, I pick you. You're going to be blessed forever. And everyone like that is with you is going to be blessed.
Well,
awesome.
Listen, so I didn't know, because, we know the story of Abraham from our Bible, but that's what I was saying. In some of these other rabbinic texts, there's more of an origin story of Abraham that starts basically like when he was 14. And so this is not something I read before. So this week I was reading more about those stories about him. And basically it was like in the book of Jubilee and stuff like that, which is not in our Bible. But it's like Abraham is like 14 and his father is actually someone who builds idols. Like that's his job, is to build idols. And he's like, there's
Abraham's father.
Mm-hmm. And there are very specific stories where Abraham's like, at an early age, I don't know how he like connects to this monotheistic God or whatever, but he's like, I don't believe in all these other gods. And so there's even these stories, which I didn't get into all of that because there's multiple ones where he like burns his father's his father's like trying to build these statues to sell and stuff, and he like burns his father's statues. And anyway, all that to be said, back to Nimrod, is that supposedly throws Abraham in a fire, and then he doesn't get burned by that fire. And that's the first, which happens multiple times with multiple characters, where it's like they get thrown into a fire and then they don't burn and they don't, but I had never heard any of this about Abraham because I had only ever known our canonized version. But there's a lot more Jewish texts that like go into more origin stories of Abraham, which I found interesting. But that sort of leads up to where we are now, which is like Abraham as an adult who is still monotheistic, and really like the first, in this version, the first like monotheistic kind of guy. And I think that's why God is like, I like you, is because he's the one who's like representing him the best, or like one of the only ones who's sort of following him at this point. There's more too, where there's a school of Shem, so like Noah's son, that's also in some of these other texts I didn't know anything about, where there apparently was a school that they were like passing on this sort of monotheistic teachings, where it's said that Abraham like studied at that school, which is sort of where Abraham got this monotheistic tradition in a polytheistic culture that he was living in.
Oh, okay. So maybe because Abraham was monotheistic, amongst a bunch of polytheistic people, God is like, I'm going to bless you.
Exactly. And like he's trying to burn the polytheistic statues and stuff. And so that's sort of why God's like, yeah, you, because you're honoring me or whatever,
Slay.
So now back to our version of the Bible. He's an adult, and this is the first time. Well, actually, a woman's already. Eve got thrown under the bus, and then now a woman's about to get thrown under the bus again by a man.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, so Abram, who will become Abraham, is married to Sarai, who we know will become Sarah. And Sarah is barren, right? She can't reproduce.
She can now reproduce.
Which seems pretty unvaluable during this time. Am I wrong in saying? I mean, I hated that coming out of my mouth.
But don't. I don't know if does it mention that in this chapter though, because
I thought it did.
It does get very specific. We won't cover it today, but in the next one, that's the whole story about her not being able to have kids is like really what stems into the whole next thing that is like really important. So, but in this part, maybe it mentions that she can't have kids already, but eventually she can't have kids. We know that for sure. But right at this point,
no, I think they said that.
Well,
I swear to God they did.
So basically in this one, he's like, 75 right now? And so in our version, Abraham appears, if you go back and read those other texts that are like other Jewish texts, it's interesting. If you want to explore, go explore them. But in this canonized version of the Bible, it appears like when Abraham's 75 is like when his story begins. And
it says, in verse 11, in chapter 11, verse 30, it says, now Sarai was barren. She had no children. But it also says Abram took multiple wives.
As they did.
As they be doing. Okay, well, if I was picking a wife back then, I would not pick Sarai. Oh.
Did his other wives have children?
Well, you're going to have to wait till next week to figure
Father
that out.
Abraham had many sons. And many sons had Father Abraham.
That's like the next week's gonna be real. It's gonna be real exciting.
I feel bad for saying that. But yeah, no, because like the only thing that mattered back then was like repopulating, I guess. So it's a big deal that Sarai was barren. But if you're barren today, you're beautiful. And you don't need to have kids. But so basically in this section, Abram and Sarai go to Egypt because there was like a really bad famine. And so they're like, we got to get out of here. And then this is crazy. Abram's going through Egypt and he says to Sarai, he's like, hey, like the Egyptians, he was like, you're really hot. Like you're really beautiful. And the Egyptians are going to kill me because you're so hot.
That's what I mean. He throws his wife under the bus.
So I need you to pretend like you're my sister so that they'll like be really nice to me.
And gives her to the Pharaoh to sleep with.
So then the Pharaoh, his friends see Sarai and they're like, there's this new girl in town. She's like a bombshell. She's just entered the villa and she's really hot. And so then Pharaoh takes Sarai as one of his wives, I guess, and is sleeping with her. And then God causes all these plagues. It doesn't specify at all. It's a really short section. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abraham's wife.
Which is really not Pharaoh's fault because you're like, you told me that was your sister.
Yeah.
You know?
Wait, why? Hold on. Why would he do something if that was his wife and not his sister?
Because he was afraid because she was so beautiful.
He thought they were going to try to like kill him to steal her because she was so hot.
So he just gave her away?
So
exactly.
Then he was just like, listen, pretend you're my sister, fuck Pharaoh, like have sex with Pharaoh
so you protect me basically.
Yeah.
Like telling his wife, go sleep with Pharaoh so that they don't think that you're too.
So he gave his wife to Pharaoh and Pharaoh gave Abraham sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels.
Yeah.
In exchange for his sister, who was actually his wife. But then God sent all these plagues to Pharaoh and was like, hey.
Pharaoh?
Because.
What about to Abraham? What the fuck?
I don't know.
Exactly.
He's the one that just sold his wife off.
And Pharaoh's like, why did you say she is my sister? So I took her for my wife. So then Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. So basically, in the end, Abram got to keep all this stuff.
Yeah.
All these livestock, servants, whatever. And then he got to take... So basically, Abram was trying to go through Egypt, and he was like, they're going to kill me if I go through Egypt. You pretend to be my wife. So you pretend to be my sister. You hook up with Pharaoh. Pharaoh's going to give me a bunch of stuff. And then God created a plague. And then Pharaoh was like, fuck this, take her back. And then so Abram got to go through Egypt with his wife, and he got a lot of ox and donkey and stuff.
Wow, an insane strategy.
And you gotta remember this about Sarah because
a lot of stuff goes down with her in the future.
Yeah, she keeps getting thrown under the bus
because she's so hot.
Oh, no.
No.
As she ages, like in the next episode we'll talk about it because it's like he keeps throwing her under the bus basically in a lot of ways.
But long story short, Abram got through Egypt by whoring his wife out.
Right.
And he got through scotch-free.
Exactly. And got a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Sheep and oxen and donkeys.
Does Pharaoh kill him after he learned that?
Because they were being punished by God, but with the...
Yeah, it says there were plagues on him, so I think they were like, okay, fuck this shit.
Oh, they're like afraid of his power.
Yeah.
I guess so. Which is funny because that seems to happen a lot in Egypt, specifically where they're like, God like plagues Egyptians specifically to then get people, because that's like the whole Exodus story. And but yeah, it's quite a yeah, it says specifically, like, Pharaoh says, what is this that you've done? What is this that you've done to me? When he finds that out, which is like, unfortunate, but yeah, then he sends him off, and it's that's sort of like how Abraham gets his wealth, and then they go off on a little adventure, and then that's sort of where this if we're doing like the 3 chapters. That's sort of where this one ends, and then we'll have to get to the next one later, because it goes into like them having children, and that's a whole
building their like whole empire and legacy.
Yeah, which is like really Abraham is like the origins of all.
I guess we're descendants of Abraham.
Monotheism, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. So Abraham is the monotheistic king, and we all are descendants of Abraham. And Abraham's a cuck, and he literally like sent his wife to get like hogtied by Pharaoh and his friends so that he get like free donkeys and stuff.
Yeah, and that's that, and yeah, we're off to a good start. But he's chosen by God, apparently, and
the men in this time can do whatever the hell they want.
Well, just wait.
Poor women.
Just wait.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, of course.
Who said no?
Oh, that was me.
Oh, that was you?
I thought it
sorry, that sounded crazy.
Kidding.
Is Sarai seen as someone, how do I put this? Is that seen as like a moral good of what she did? Like, is she seen as like, this is a good, is she, or taught as like, she was a good subservient wife to Abraham to be put in this, to like go with this decision? Does she have any kind of like voice in this at all?
No,
Are you like
she
taught?
She doesn't say nothing.
You're not like taught, you were not taught that like, so this is the model that you should be going after because Abraham has succeeded in his goal despite what he has done to her. Well, and that is a good thing. Is there a moral value placed onto her at all?
There's some. I wouldn't say necessarily specifically with her for this part of the story. Maybe later. There's definitely other women where it is more of that kind of thing where it's like they do something or something happens to them and it's sort of viewed as like, this is how a wife should be.
Right.
You know, but
it's really, it's not, this section is definitely not passing the Bechdel test, if that's what you're asking. But no, there's no real insight given into it. And, you know, based on things we know about people nowadays, it's just like Abraham had multiple wives. He like basically gave up his wife out of cowardice that he would be killed to Pharaoh, where it's like, if you trust God and like God is blessing you, couldn't you have just like been honest and God would have taken care of you? You know, like where was there no punishment for Abraham? But it doesn't go into that. And it was just like, that's what he did and it all worked out.
Well, not to be controversial, but I'm like, I don't know if Abraham was like, you know, mentally all there either, because I think, you know, as it goes on, some of the choices that he makes or almost makes in the coming chapters are like, you know, with his wives, with his children.
Yeah, it's safe to say that Abraham is the source of mental illness, right?
Well,
he's given later
safe
on.
to say that.
I think
BPD.
That might be, you know, it might be offensive to people. It is giving some schizophrenia for sure. Yeah, it's there's some scary. Yeah, there's some scary.
It's giving, like let's get grandma back to bed.
I mean, yeah. So, you know, and it's funny because he's like the moral in the world. He's the moral figure, which is interesting as this all goes on, as he's like the most, you know,
revered patriarch in like history. But it's like, bro, this guy needs like a serious therapist, psychiatrist. He needs Klonopin. He needs like help.
Right.
I'm scared.
Right. So, on that note, any more questions?
No.
Not at this time, thank you.
More will be revealed.
Can't wait till next time, though.
Alrighty.
See you in heaven.
See you in heaven.